Welcome to Running on Ice, the coolest community in freight. I'm your host, Mary O'Connell, bringing you the latest tech updates, warehouse news, and everything happening in the cold chain world. Not only is there the coolest show in freight, but there's Running on Ice, a newsletter that could not be colder. You can subscribe to that on freightwaves.com/runningonIce. Today, we welcome back the one and only Richie Daigle, Enterprise Account Executive at Tive. Thanks for coming back, Richie.
Thanks for having me back. I was worried after last time. I was like, are they ever going to invite me back? Was that a one of one? Am I going to get another invitation? But here we are. I guess I didn't embarrass myself too badly last time.
Oh, no, I loved it. We just had to get it for like the peak of the summer. You know, everybody's kind of like hot and sweaty 24/7. So we got to give them something real chilly to cool them down. Because I know personally I'm very tired of being just sweaty all the time.
Are you trying to say I'm a cold person? Is that what I'm getting?
And I'm saying you bring the chill, you bring the good vibes.
Okay, I'll take that. That sounds better.
So today we were going to kind of break into is actually a very appropriate description. We were going to kind of get into the nitty gritty of theft in the cold chain. And I know it's been on the rise and et cetera, but compared to dry van, would you say that theft is more prevalent in cold chain or is it more prevalent in dry van?
That's a complicated question. It seems straightforward, but I will say that every time there's a lot of breaking news about theft, breaking because it's late breaking, and then also because theft oftentimes involves breaking. But I think dry van versus reefer, like where is it more prevalent? Theft is booming at such an alarming rate right now that it's hard to even keep track of statistics like that. Like it may be changing from week to week. That being said, one of the most targeted types of freight is food and beverage. If not, I think that's number one or number two. So a lot of that is being moved via reefer or seasonally, like, energy drinks and canned drinks, maybe dry van during the summer and reefer during the winter or something like that. So it can fluctuate, like those are huge targets. But I think theft in general is a bigger problem now than maybe ever. So regardless of your mode of transportation, it's something that people should be thinking about.
I gotta admit, I don't love that answer. I was kind of hoping for like, oh yeah, specifically bottled water is more on the rise of theft, and PlayStations and TVs, not just like, yeah, it could really be anything. It could really be anything.
Yeah, but the thing is like you look at CargoNext statistics on theft, like from 2022, and it was, I forget, like January was something like 155 events, and everyone was like, this is kind of standard. And then 2023 comes along, and it's like January, February of 23, all of a sudden they're up to 255 events or 244 events, reported events in 23, and everyone's freaking out, like the whole security industry and insurance companies, like, we've never seen it over 200 in a month, and here we are in January, February, and it's like 240. And then there's not been a month in 2024 under 300 events reported. Like, so when I say that it's exploding, we're talking about the problem just from what's being reported has doubled in 2 years from 2022 to now. Those are big numbers. And yeah, I mean, I went to the TAPA conference, Transport Asset Protection Association, and I mean the big takeaway was theft is bad. It's worse than we've ever seen it. We don't know how to stop it. I hope everyone has a safe trip back home. Like it was kind of depressing, but so it seems kind of like an overarching statement or an easy statement to say that like theft is just bad, but no, it's really a big problem. And it's something that people need to be aware of, because if it hasn't impacted you already, the odds are is that it's just a matter of time.
Yeah, because I was hoping that we could be like, oh yeah, if you have pharmaceutical or if you have energy drinks, then yeah, that's going to be a big target. So maybe take extra precautions with those loads. But unfortunately, it sounds like it's just, anyone's a subject or a potential subject of it. Um, and that I don't love. I gotta say, I don't love that we're breaking records in this specific area.
Think about it in terms of there's different types of theft. So you have theft, opportunistic theft, right? A train stopped in an inopportune neighborhood, and everyone in the neighborhood's like, there's stuff inside those rail cars. Well, let's go check it out, see what we can get, And there's a lot of that that's happening, especially now that trains are getting longer and fewer personnel, etc. And then there's strategic theft, where bad guys are tech enabled and savvy and able to through a number of different ways figure out what is inside of specific containers or specific trucks, track them, locate them, target them, break into them quickly, and they're gone. They're in and out in a hurry. And then you have pilferage, like, well, let's just kind of rummage through these here boxes, and we're not going to take everything, but let's remove 5 of the smartphones from this box of 30, or let's remove a little bit of, like, a pallet. All of a sudden a pallet's missing, where there's kind of skimming off the top, if you will. And then there's a lot of different trucking companies that are like, hey, I'm moving. I have a truckload. I have half the space available, so I'm just going to cram more stuff in the back. I'm not going to hurt anybody. I just need to make some extra money. And there's a lot of that activity happening as well. So there's a lot of different ways, a lot of different risks to be aware of and kind of navigate. That being said, like, anything that can quickly be turned into cash is something that you should be aware of. So any kind of alcohol, energy drinks, even certain types of food, and even seafood. I mean, there's kind of black markets for all these things, and people have figured out that um, the time that it takes to turn pallets of energy drinks into wads of cash is not all that great, and it's a pretty good way to make a lot of money. So if you're moving freight like that falls into those parameters, take precautions. Yeah, it's risky out there.
So that brings to a very interesting story that a couple months ago there was $30,000 of snow crabs stolen. With something like that, this is, I mean, you don't have to have the perfect answer for it. This is just more of a, what the heck do you do with that much snow crab? Like, yes, you said that there's a black market and you could sell it, but how do you, like, how do you get it moved so quickly that, like, that's what I'm trying to figure out, is like, how, like, okay, I have 2 to 3 to more pallets of snow crab. How do I move them and still keep them like fresh where they can be eaten? Because otherwise you'd assume that I have to break into a truck, an hour away from a seafood market.
It all depends on what were the motivations for this theft to begin with, right? Like, was this a crime of opportunity? What's what's behind door number 3, Bob? And like, they just open up this container, and they're like, it's snow crab, and then someone's like, oh, we can't do anything with that snow crab, man. What are we gonna do? And then someone else in the back is like, let's cook it, get as much as you can, we'll have everybody in the neighborhood. Like, you don't, like, that could have been the scenario, or it could have been some, I don't know, somebody put out something on the dark web that I need some snow crab, and somebody's like, I know where to find some, this train car that comes by, and like, you have no idea, like, what's going on behind all these thefts. So I don't know what you do with it. I would imagine that you're probably either have something worked out to where that's going to be turned to cash pretty quickly. What that could be, I have no idea. Probably any number of possibilities, or someone's eating well, and them and their buddies are gonna have one awesome dinner.
That Costco deep freeze really came in handy there.
Yeah, or like, you just check all the grocery stores. Like, did anybody come by and buy the whole grocery store out of butter? For these snow crabs, like.
Are you out of butter and Old Bay?
Exactly.
I often wonder about that because, like drinks and stuff, though, that, like you said, those are easier to resell pretty quickly, but like, that's a lot of crap, and I'm just like, what do you do with it? Like, do you just put it on the back of a pickup truck Anyway, we're not going to sit here and dissect criminals' motives because we'll be here all day for that. Um, but I guess when it comes to kind of as a shipper protecting yourself and saying, okay, well, we know that we ship energy drinks. I'm gonna use that example. We ship energy drinks. We know this is gonna be a problem. We know this is an eventuality, not a if, but a when it's gonna happen. Have you guys found that like having, location trackers or anything else like that, have you found the use of technology is really kind of deterred or had any impact on that? Like, for example, I don't know, again, I don't know criminals' motives, but if they jump up in a truck and see like a little location tag on there, are they just suddenly like, ooh, we can't take this? Or do they still steal it with essentially like a low jack on it?
Yeah, so a great question. I think a lot of companies are thinking about this right now because a lot of people's stuff is getting stolen right now. Um, so it's a big subject. I think you have to do what you can, and technology and trackers play a very important role in a broader uh, plan, and that plan can be everything from warehouse SOPs so that when a truck is bumping up to a dock, that people are checking the driver's license, they're taking photos of the driver, the driver's license, the license plate, they're verifying all of the information about that truck that is the actual truck that's supposed to be there. I can't tell you how many times I hear stories about, well, this truck just bumped up and we were 3/4 of the way loading it, and then someone was like, "Oh yeah, we should go check the driver's paperwork and all this." And they go talk to the driver, and the driver's like, "Oh yeah, I got all that for you. Let me get it out of the cab for you real quick." And then the driver gets in the cab and then just takes off, and it's just gone with whatever he managed to get, or even worse, they get the full truckload and they just drive away, and you never see it ever again. So it could be SOPs at the warehouse to make sure that everybody's doing their job to verify that people are who they are and the right people are picking up freight, to having any sort of vetting procedure in place if they're working with brokers or carriers or whoever, that they're trusted and worthwhile and vetted. Those practices can go a long way. They're not going to solve everything. There's a lot of great technologies that are out there for that, and we still see this huge boom in theft. And having trackers in place is crucial as well. There was a slide at a conference I went to. There was a presentation about security, and there was one slide that all it said was trackers work. Period. Like that was the entire slide. It was just like there is no excuse to not be using trackers on high value or high theft risk freight today. And the evidence is overwhelming. I mean, trackers today are more sophisticated. They're doing more than just location. The Tide trackers are recording temperature and shock, and they're recording humidity. And most importantly, there's a light sensor so that as soon as doors open up, text messages and emails are already going out. So that, for example, in what you were talking about, do trackers deter people? If someone opens up a truck and they see a Tide tracker on the first pallet staring at them at eye level, they freak out and throw it in a bush. Well, it's too late. Like, the light sensor's already gone off. A number of people already know that something's not right, and chances are something might be happening behind the scenes already. That being said, people are quick. Some people are like, "Hey, we got to be out of here in minutes. There's a tracker on this load," and they grab however many boxes they can. We've had some customers that use one tracker for the light, and then they'll hide a second tracker in a box, and that's been very successful as well. And we can watch this box walk away, and we see exactly where it goes and where it's located, and our customers, share that information with people who would want that information, and we're able to get things recovered and get things back that way.
Because I know that when it comes to freight theft, like essentially you just have to file the police report and everybody goes, we're not going to find it. Like pretty much it's gone into the ether. Um, but I feel like with a tracker, you're like, oh yeah, so they stole it, and by the way, here's where they are. Like I feel like that's got to be just like a really nice, like if you just follow this, you'll get there and you'll find something. there. I feel like that has to be because obviously, especially in a temperature controlled space, you can't necessarily recover that product because it definitely more than likely has fallen out of its temperature range. Um, but it's at least something. And that way, hopefully, it in theory would deter them from stealing this type of goods again. But again, who knows? They're criminals. They do what they want to do.
But even if you can't like recover it to the point of having it be useful, but it's still, depending on what the product is, you still may want to get it recovered, period. If it's a controlled substance in the pharma space, you want that off the streets. If it's crab legs that have been stolen and are now out of temp that are going to be tried to sold for cheap to all these restaurants, you might want to like stop the next outbreak of foodborne illness in some town from the crab leg special that rushed through some sort of restaurant. um, so there's still like a lot of motivation to recover freight even if it's not usable anymore. So yeah, to your point, like, and law enforcement, if you can make things easier for people, it's typically more well receptive, more well received, I should say. So yeah, if you're able to go to law enforcement and say our stuff got stolen, but we had a tracker on it, and here's the details, it's likely going to be a different response than our stuff got stolen and it's in the 18 wheeler. I think that has a white trailer. Have you seen any of those around? Like that might, it's a more challenging sort of situation for people there.
Because obviously, like the police have just as many resources as like some people do, and if it's gone, it's gone. Like if they just grabs it, like while the train stopped, there's nothing that we there's not there's nothing unless every train car was equipped with like a camera and like high resolution of this is who it was. Sadly, the day to day does not operate quite like the action movies do. Although it would be really cool just to be able to be like enhance, enhance, and it suddenly makes a completely clear, crystal clear picture.
Yeah, and I think that people need to be realistic about theft and technology and solutions in general. There is no technology that is going to remove 100% of your theft problems or make theft go away, period. Like this sort of panacea, utopia, whatever, does not exist. So, like for like an ROI calculation, it's like our theft problem is this big. It's like I'm not trying to say that we're going to solve all that because nothing is going to do that. But following SOPs, vetting who you're doing business with, relying on relationships with people that you trust. Trusted relationships are more important now than ever before. Utilizing trackers on all your shipments. These are things that um, impact percentages and how frequently theft is impacting you and how big of a problem it is. And I think if people can take strides to lessen um, the overall risk, then they're going to set themselves up to be doing as well as anybody can in these conditions.
Yeah, it's one of the, it comes back to you can control what you can control and you can't control everything else. So if you just kind of mitigate your exposure to any potential threats, that's great. Because if you say, okay, well, I can only control things that happen at my warehouses or at the facilities or at pickup and drop off, I can't control what happens on a truck parking lot or when a driver's on a break. If a driver's on a break or sleeping and someone decides to break in or someone breaks down and they break in on the side of the highway, you can't really control that, but that's where the trackers and the other stuff comes in. So you say, okay, well, we know it happened around this time, and for example, if you have enough historical, hopefully you don't have enough historical data to know that, oh, it always happens around these 10 exits on this one highway, then okay, you don't stop there. Like it suddenly becomes drivers do not stop there under any circumstances. If we know from exit 22 to 42 that there, if you stop, there's a very high likelihood you'll get broken into. I think any kind of like patterns or figuring out anything like that just to try to mitigate just mitigate the unknown, it would be extremely advantageous.
Yeah, and trying to put any sort of friction between your shipment and other shipments. A lot of times, opportunistic theft is going to go for what is easiest. So it could be parking a truck and backing it up so there's like a light pole right up against the back of the truck, where opening these doors is a little bit trickier than like that truck over there that's not against a light pole. So sometimes it can be something very, very simple like that, that can make a big difference. But any sort of friction, whether it's seals, which is a whole nother, or locks, or things like that, that's a whole nother, topic. That's like a deep wormhole there. But things that you can do of that nature, avoiding certain areas altogether, even if the route's a little bit longer, you're just you're making it a little bit more difficult. You're adding some friction that the thieves have to go through to get your stuff, and that's going to play in your favor over time.
Yeah, 100%. I like that. Just, it's the little things. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to get a state of the art security system for every single thing. Just a little tracker, a little temp tracker, and just make it slightly difficult. Just make it slightly more difficult. And I didn't even think of something as simple as just backing your truck up to a light pole, because that it's really going to hamper a lot. It's going to get really loud to try and break in there and do anything. And yeah, I feel like we need a whole episode on seals, on just here's the different seals and how obnoxious they are to get into, if you don't have the right tools, which, in theory, your receiver would have the right tools.
Yeah, and then also like why, and this is something that comes up fairly often. Like our customer says, we got a light alert and we contacted our carrier and they sent us back a picture of the seal and they said everything's fine. What do we do? Well, you have to understand that you can't get the doors off a truck and leave the seals intact. And so like there's, that consideration as well. And that's not always the case. Sometimes there's valid reasons if there's a hole in the trailer, or it has one of these kind of translucent tops, or any number of things. But like, ask questions, be inquisitive. Don't just take a quick answer for what for face value or for what it is. Like, be inquisitive, be curious, um, and yeah, do what you can, to, and then understand that some of the trackers, like the Type tracker, it can do, if you're moving temperature sensitive freight, it can manage your temperature regulations and temperature recording and be a security, solution for you kind of all together. So there's ways that some of these technologies can check a number of different boxes.
And I think that's going to be the biggest thing going forward, is making sure that you kind of, because you don't want three separate trackers, one for temperature, one for light, and one for location. I think being able to combine as many things as you can is going to be the way of the future. And just start with Tive, basically. Just start with Tive.
And then you could have, whether it's our monitoring team, we have a 24/7 monitoring team, or like a lot of our customers, they have 24/7 teams. But you could have alert bundles that are set up around light. But then also, we need to know if it gets above or below these temperatures. We need to know if it gets below or above these humidity levels, or this amount of shock. From an impact standpoint, we can set up like, we call them alert presets, but basically like alert bundles that encompass all of those parameters, so that you have all of that information, available. And if any of those things take place, you're aware of it quickly. It's kind of like automating your shipment awareness to a certain extent.
I love that. But we're not automating today. Our final question. It has come to that point in the show. And Richie, since we already know where you stand on cereal is soup, it's only appropriate that we get your best dad joke today, because I love a good corny dad joke. So I'm going to need one.
So I have two, if that's okay. Um,
That's more than okay. The more the merrier at this point.
did you know that the adjective for metal is metallic? But it's not the case for iron, which is ironic.
Okay, I actually really like that one. That's a good one.
Also, fun little known fact: every ant hill has one ant, for the whole colony, that is super upbeat, cheerful, positive, cheering on all of the other ants, the hard worker ants, keeping the queen in good spirits. They call this one the antidepressant.
Okay, that one might be the best one that I've heard.
That's I'll spare you from going further, but I'll just leave you with those two.
I love it. If someone has a good dad joke for you, or if they have any questions on cargo theft or truckers, where can they find you outside the show?
Yeah, you can email me at richie.daigle@tive.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. So yeah, those are probably the best two places to find me. Feel free to send a connection or a message, dad joke or otherwise. And yeah, I'll get back to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Look forward to the next one.
You can catch other episodes of Running on Ice here on FreightWaves TV, YouTube, or anywhere you get your podcasts like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Need more Running on Ice news? No sweat. Subscribe to the newsletter at freightwaves.com/running on ice. See you on the internet.